And we are back to talk about possibly the best episode of Ahsoka.
Star Wars Sabine. Star Wars Sabine. We're talking about the show Star Wars Sabine.
I said this to you last time. I really think the show should not have been called Ahsoka. It probably should have been called something else. I would have said Heir to the Empire, because it kind of is Heir to the Empire.
Oh, and they went and they did that in this episode, didn't they? They you know, said Heir to the Empire, then looked at the camera. You want Thrawn to return as Heir to the Empire? Oh. Dark Force Rising, The Last Command.
You're right, though. Like, Sabine really is, like, the breakout star. I'm really loving the actress. She's doing a phenomenal job. And I gotta say, just some bangers in this episode. How Ahsoka basically tells her, look, if we can't, get to where Ezra is, perhaps nobody should. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this episode, right off the bat, I'm just going to say it's the best one so far.
I agree.
And I would say that, like, in my mind, when people are like, oh, what's the best Star Wars series? After this episode, I can confidently say it's still Andor, of course. But the second best series, I'm gonna start saying that the series is looking like it might be better than Mandalorian.
I got to agree with you about Andor. Yeah. I told you, like I said, I said this in the premiere first two episodes. It's going to be a fight between this and maybe Mando season 2 for what takes second place, because Andor's still good.
Yeah. And Andor's in a different league. Nothing's going to approach Andor. But I appreciate the fact that there was a real conflict between characters, Carmine. Like a real conflict between characters that where there were real stakes involved, and there was I felt something. There was like emotion, and I felt something in a Star Wars show besides Andor. It was it was impressive. I'm saying it's impressive. Like, even though I did kind of see it coming.
The good guys don't win. The good guys make a bad decision. Things are worse off. Sabine, by the way, is probably not the worst written character, but morally, like, she's so bad. Like, Ahsoka has been right consistently. It reminds me of how you say in Ice and Fire, how every book there's always that one character that everyone should listen to. One character
that's right all the time. Yeah.
But nobody listens to them. Like, this is Ahsoka and Sabine. Ahsoka is always right, and Sabine always does the right thing.
It's Pycelle and a Feast for Crows, right?
Or Cat and Clash. Yeah.
Clash of Kings. Yeah, Cat and Clash of Kings. Yeah, it's there was that moment where, because like it looked like at the beginning when she's like, we're probably gonna have to leave Ezra there because of the map, and we can't have Thrawn back. And Sabine, pulls that like, yeah, sure. And at the time I was like, Sabine is like totally, like, on the one hand, it's pretty obvious that we know that Thrawn has to come back. So, like, I knew that, there had to be some, they had to fail in some respect. But I was like, are they gonna have Sabine and Ahsoka betray each other? Are they gonna be ballsy enough? Because Mandalorian isn't that ballsy, but obviously Andor would be. So, and they did it. She betrayed him. Which I would even say that this makes it better than Last Jedi, where, did I ever tell you my like better ending to Last Jedi than the one we got?
You might have, but I don't recall. Maybe not. Tell me.
Well, you know how Kylo Ren says to Rey, like, come off with me, and like we can form our own like dark Jedi. She just needed to say yes. And like, all of a sudden that movie is so much better. And then she got, like, rather than her saying no and then showing up on the salt planet and having that like horrible shootout where she's like cheering and lifting rocks at the back door, like, cut all of that and just have her go off with Kylo Ren. And then you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen in the third movie? I have no clue what's going to happen in the third movie. you know?
That's one of the problems with Last Jedi. It doesn't end on that somber note that Empire does, because it tries to be. It tried very hard to be Empire, but it didn't end the way Empire did. It ended on a
Right.
very hopeful
It's
note.
weird. It's a weird thing because like Ryan Johnson takes so many risks and then he doesn't take the risk with Rey, which is odd because so many risks are done in that movie, you know, and he like killing Snoke, um, uh, uh, having the purple hair woman like be frustrating and sidelining our hero,
Killing Luke.
sidelining Poe. Yeah, sidelining Poe and having Luke be a like completely turning that character on its head. Um and then the ending is the most like lame. Rey comes back, saves everybody, like crap. So it was fantastic that like they had the come off with me and she did it. And I was like, yeah, all right. Now we're gonna see what's gonna happen. Now, I mean, I have no idea what's gonna happen with Sabine. You know, like it's mysterious. What could happen? Because she got us, you know, good, evil. Who knows? Fucking good choice. Good choice. Keep us guessing.
This really seems like the season finale. Like I know it's not. I know we're at the halfway point, but like had the final episode been this episode, I would have been so pissed. But I'm so glad it's not.
Oh
Like
yeah.
this is first off, we real quick because you mentioned Last Jedi. Ironically, going back and watching Return of the Jedi, Luke throwing away the lightsaber when Rey hands it to him is actually within character because if you remember, the last time we see Luke Skywalker when he's confronting the
He throws
Emperor,
away a lightsaber.
he throws away his lightsaber.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
Yeah. Yeah.
this show, the way I could describe this show is because George Lucas has this thing, and he's instilled this into Dave Filoni, right? The thing that that George always told Dave is that Star Wars is for everyone, and you should always make it with everyone in mind. It shouldn't be like a mature, dark story. It shouldn't be like super kiddie. It should have like that nice balance where anyone can enjoy it. I'm not saying kids can't enjoy this, but this was clearly made for people who are now adults that watched Dave Filoni's Clone Wars 15 years ago. And I appreciate that because the tone is
Yeah.
not dark. I wouldn't say the tone is dark or depressing, but it's a bit mature. It's not colorful, only in some
Right.
places. I do love the contrast of that beautiful forest where they're like fighting in the. It's so beautiful. That's the whole planet is gorgeous. A sea post or whatever the fuck it's called. It's sea dos, whatever. So beautiful. But I love the music, the violin at the end. Oh, it feels gothic. It feels like it feels
Yeah.
like a new way Star Wars hasn't ventured into, like a new vibe, a new groove. I just fucking love like just the feeling of it. It's not this is pod racing type of like moment. It's not
Right.
grand and spectacular. It's just a nice, soft, easy tone, a little dark, not too dark, mature, not too mature, hits it just right. Because our heroes don't
Yeah.
win. The bad guys might be winning. I think we're going to have some type of twist where they're expecting Thrawn to wage war on the New Republic. We know that doesn't happen because sequel trilogy. That's the First Order
Yeah.
instead. I think Thrawn is going to come back and he's going to be like, yeah, there's another threat somewhere else.
You know what's so weird, and I was thinking a lot about this issue because we're, you know, it seems like we're constantly talking about like grifters on the internet, and I think a central part of the discussion about like what all of this is in our industry of talking about fantasy sci-fi and being like, you know, you and me being, you know, men of a certain age, 18 to 49, whatever, like men like watching fantasy and sci-fi, but at the same time, like there's an important thing to recognize that these are also things that are marketed to children. You know, like Marvel movies. It's funny because it's like, you know, 55-year-old men complaining about Captain Marvel, and it's like this is Disney. Like this is a company that specializes in marketing shit to children that bought a comic book company like that's comic books which are made for children. So
Right.
like you're angry that like a product is being marketed to little girls, that like an organization a company that focuses and specializes in marketing things to children, you're angry as a full-grown man that it's being marketed to little girls, and keeping all of that in mind, that we're watching Star Wars, which is largely marketed to children, owned by Disney, a company that is for entertainment for children. And then we get a show like Ahsoka, which I have to say, because Andor is very adult, but I have to say that Ahsoka, it feels adult, even though it is probably the friendliest show, Star Wars product ever produced for children. How many people have died? How many people have died in Ahsoka?
We should probably reserve to say that until afterwards, because
over?
Because I would argue that Book of Boba and Kenobi is pretty much up there.
But I mean, weren't they slaughtering people in the streets? And they, well, first of all, Book of Boba Fett, he kills Bib Fortuna. They kill all of the sand people, and then they have that big battle in the streets, slaughtering people right and left. There's a lot of carnage in Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian is just, stormtrooper after stormtrooper, just carnage constantly. But has anyone been killed? I'm sure. So, I mean, I saw some pilots die in this episode. I guess
I was gonna say Merrick,
the body count is pretty. Yeah, but the body count is pretty low. Yeah, there was a few people at that factory that Hera went to that ended up dying. But overall, the body count is very low for Ahsoka, especially for Star Wars. So even the this is a friendly thing. So far, we've seen nothing that I would say is too damaging for a child to watch. But at the same time, the show feels like an adult show.
I think it dances around. I think it dances on the edge of it being a mature adult show, but also a show that any 12 to 17-year-old could pick up and be okay with. I mean, I was someone at 12 very recently, a while ago, and I would have loved this show. But when we talk about kids, we're talking about someone 5, 6, 7 years old. Could they enjoy this? Yeah, I'm sure they could. There's lightsabers and battles and all that stuff.
There's lightsaber battles. You're right. Yeah.
But I agree with you. I really love the difficult choice Sabine had to make. As an adult, that really I appreciated that much more. Yeah. This is a show clearly made for people who grew up with the Clone Wars and Rebels and are now adults, and they are giving us some nice fan service. Also, that guy, I forgot the Kim from Kim's Convenience. They really like that guy. He comes back in everything.
I really like that guy. Yeah.
He comes back in everything.
Yeah. I mean, I get, even though I haven't seen Star Wars Rogues, I mean, I'm they do mention Ezra enough that I can and I can see the emotion on Sabine's face, so we get it. We just don't, we just don't know. I imagine it means something different for you because you know who Ezra is. So I only know Ezra as a concept,
So let me make this very clear. I grew up with Clone Wars. I didn't grow up with Rebels. I caught it. Rebels was the first Star Wars cartoon show. Now, you have to understand something about the difference between Clone Wars on Cartoon Network under George Lucas versus Rebels under Disney Plus or Disney. Clone Wars had dark moments, a lot of dark moments. Cartoon Network has always, once again, danced that fine line between 80s dark children's shows and movies and modern children's shows and movies, which have those adult themes and adult jokes that you only get when you watch it retroactively. Watching SpongeBob as a kid, it never really clicked with you, some of the stuff and some of the innuendos, but as an adult, I'm oh. Disney doesn't do that with its cartoons, right? So I'll give you one example.
Wait, you're trying to say that lightsabers aren't dicks?
Not in the Disney Star Wars. No, I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry to spoil that for you.
You're trying to say that there was no innuendo when Sabine gets stabbed. with the
No,
lightsaber.
unfortunately,
There's no.
not in Disney's Star Wars. They don't do that. There is one example I can give you. It's in Rebels. Sabine has a character arc where she has to go back to Mandalore. Now, the Mandalorians don't like her because, as a teenager, she helped the Empire design a weapon that specifically targets Mandalorian armor. And it's a very, like, tense situation. She comes off her ship, and all the Mandalorians are staring at her, and they're like, and she has to, face the music that, she helped build a weapon that helped destroy her people. And then the next minute, Ezra and Chopper are on a jetpack, and it's cartoony. Whoa, what's going on? Like, Rebels wasn't that great. It had some great moments here and there, but the tone was like, it's clearly for kids.
And you're saying Ezra is also kind of an annoying character. You're saying this is like everybody going to rescue Jar Jar Binks. Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't say he's on Jar Jar's level, but like Ezra is nowhere near on the level of like, I don't know, Ahsoka or Anakin or like other characters we've seen before. Like Ezra is whatever. He's fine. He's the main character. Some of the supporting characters I would argue are better than Ezra, like Kanan and Hera.
Better than Ezra? I can't believe you said better than Ezra. Now we're back, because I told you who the band Better Than Ezra was, and now you said Better Than Ezra.
I know. I remember.
You've forgotten.
No, I remember.
We went over this before.
I remember because on stream it was a whole joke, and Will comes on and he's like, "Let's name more bands and songs Carmine doesn't know." I remember.
You know what I forgot about that you just reminded me of is that the Mandalorian armor is lightsaber proof, and I didn't even think about that when she was fighting. When she was in her fight.
That was such a sick move. Like she for whatever reason, first off, Force users should know when there's another Force user in the vicinity. Shin should know that Sabine doesn't have the Force, but still reacts anyway as though Sabine is gonna Force push her. And then Sabine just uses the wrist rocket. That's such a cool move. I like that move.
Yeah, it's true. The Force has never really been that consistent, but you're right that there should have been this like wah feeling, right? But yeah, it was fine. I do feel like Sabine should have had her butt like thoroughly beaten again. This is like an actual Jedi or an Force user. But they keep pairing them off.
I do like that a Jedi can be bested if they're not constantly on their guard, because Shin let her guard down a little bit. And Sabine, the Mandalorians did have a war with the Jedi. They did have some tricks up their sleeves. And I like that a Jedi is not all powerful, that even tricks like that Sabine pulled can catch her off guard. I will also say Merrick had a lot of theories behind him. Marok had a lot of theories going on, like who he is. Is he Star Killer? Is he this? Is he that? No.
Yeah.
Just a zombie used, resurrected by Night Sister magic, which, okay. Kind of a letdown that he wasn't like some, expanded universe character, but whatever. Someone hits me up on Discord and they're like, do you think we'll get a prequel show about that guy Marok in the suit, in the Inquisitor's suit? I'm like, man, I don't...
Right.
Because they want to give everyone... I think he's just like a character they just put in there, to sell toys, which I'm fine with. Yeah, I'm actually fine with that.
Explain to me the dust thing. What was the dust thing?
So it's established in the Clone Wars that Night Sisters have the ability to like use magic and shit, and I guess it was just... I'm going to go ahead and assume that was an Inquisitor they found. It was a guy who was dead, and using Night Sister magic, I guess she was able to zombify him and keep him as a slave to fight under their control. So, and
I see.
The moment Ahsoka strikes the killing blow, the magic just goes away, and yeah.
Okay. That's interesting, because I was a little like my other thought that was in my head was maybe Dark Jedis might, rather than exploding into lightning like the Emperor or the Emperor's clone, I suppose it's been retroactively made, or like disappearing, like some could like break into dust or something. how
There
Jedis
is
do weird
a
things when they die.
there was an explanation for that, kinda, because the Emperor, when he is destroyed, like all electric and shit, in the Old Republic video game, there was a character. I think the character's name was like Darth Nihilus or something. It sounds so lame, but the character's name was Darth Nihilus. When you killed Darth Nihilus, he did the same thing. He exploded in like this. I think there's a certain point with dark side users where they've entered the dark side so far in that some part of their body just becomes so corrupted and so filled with that type of energy that they don't go into the Force like Kenobi or Anakin did. Like their deaths are a little different because they, in a sense, reject the life side of the Force and embrace the death side of it. I think their essence is just, dark side energy, part of it at least.
Now, do you think it's a weird mystery box? Because you know how like Balin keeps talking about the greater good. Like, what do you think, like, the greater good is to him?
Order.
Because he's talking about how like order. You think it's something simple like that? Cause,
It usually
how
is.
he's like, oh, like war is the necessary evil, and then you think it's just like order in the end.
Order in the galaxy.
I was just wondering if he had some other agenda, maybe, or something.
He might.
Like he was looking for the teleportation to a different galaxy for a different reason or something.
To start the new life in another galaxy or whatever, and because this one's full of war.
Find some weird alien race there or something. I don't know, that knows how to use the Force better. I don't know. Could be anything, but you're right. If it's just boring, it's just order.
Well, if we're doing Heir to the Empire, I believe Joris C'baoth, what he wanted was, he wanted to start a new Jedi Order. That's why he wanted Leia's twins in the original expanded universe Heir to the Empire books. So if we're following the same thing there, then that's probably what he wants here. And I guess he thinks he can achieve that with Thrawn at the helm.
Something I kind of laughed at was how Balin, he pulls in Sabine and he's got Shin, and I just think it's kind of funny because like when he goes back to the ship to meet Morgan, like what she must have thought, like, dude, how are you pulling in like supermodels? Like what is it about Balin that he's pulling in these young supermodels? Like,
Balin's got the Riz.
He walks around with Shin, and then all of a sudden he comes back with Sabine and Shin. Like, she must have been like, what? What's up with this guy?
The woman who plays Shin's got those, like, awesome crazy eyes. Like, she does most of her acting is with those eyes. Props to her for that. It's so awesome.
Oh, absolutely. Because they don't give her too many lines, but yeah, she's able to do a lot with given very little. I mean, I'd say it's the same with a lot of the actors. A lot of there's not that much dialogue, and so Sabine, Natasha Bordizzo, she's got to like put on like angry pouty face a lot and act a lot when there's not that much dialogue. Same with Balin, like there's not that much dialogue. I would say even the same with Morgan, like there's not much dialogue, so you have to read everything on her face. So,
the one thing I will say about this show so far is, because we talked about Heir to the Empire, and I'm going to be cliche and say Dave Filoni should have been Heir to the Empire. Shouldn't have been J.J. Abrams or Rian Johnson. It should have been... I think what Dave Filoni is doing by essentially covering the same beats as the sequel trilogy, because he is, we have a map to a legendary figure in Star Wars mythos. It's just so much of the main story beats from sequel trilogy is here, and we're enjoying the show. I think this is Dave Filoni's attempt to show you it should have been me. I should have been in charge of the sequel trilogy. It should have been me. And I'm kind of inclined to agree with him. He should have been Heir to the Empire. This should have been what the sequel trilogy was about.
I agree. I mean, I do agree. And you can kind of go, like, it's funny that you mentioned those similarities, because in each respect, it's done better with Filoni. So take Force Awakens take Rey as a character compared to Sabine, right? Complaints about Rey is that there was no like struggle to get her powers. All Sabine is doing is struggling, right? Rey's main conflict, like personal conflict, was the fact that she didn't know who her parents were and always felt like an orphan. That's an intriguing. That's not that that's not an emotional, intriguing like thing to give to a character. That doesn't create conflict with anyone else. The fact that she doesn't have parents doesn't like. I mean, Kylo Ren brings it up some as a way to taunt her, but that doesn't create any conflict. Meanwhile, Sabine's conflict is that she wants to get Ezra back, and that puts her in conflict with Ahsoka. You know, like all these, like each little beat is better, right? I'm trying to think of a few others like kind of things. Like, okay, you've got Kylo Ren as the main villain versus like Balin. Now, you know, I obviously I think that you know, the acting with Kylo Ren was great, but like, what's the conflict with Kylo Ren? He feels insecure that he's not as good as his grandpa or something. But okay, how does that bring conflict with the other characters? How does that have conflict with Rey? How does that have conflict with anyone? He's has a conflict with people that are dead. I mean, he might have a weird conflict with Han, but they share one scene together and he kills him, you know?
The problem with Kylo
like,
Ren is that because Rian Johnson did something different than JJ was going for. It felt like Kylo Ren wanted to prove himself, and here comes Rey, someone who's very gifted in the Force, is able to hold him off and fight him to a standstill. It bruises his ego a little bit. He's supposed to be the heir to Vader, and here's this random girl besting him, and it's pissing him off. Like, why do you have Luke's lightsaber? Why should you? How is the Force... Because remember, right, she force grabbed the lightsaber when he was trying to. Clearly, in the Force, she's stronger than him. That's got to piss him off. That's the vibe I got, and then Rian Johnson did something different, and then JJ did something different.
He shifts gears, yeah. He shifts gears where they have, like, all of a sudden he's no longer jealous. He wants to, like, seduce her to the dark side. Or seduce her to the gray side. He wants to run off with her. Which I thought was, you know, a somewhat intriguing somewhat intriguing offer, and then that just goes away too. So and then we have our third movie. And that kiss.
and the novelization for Rise of Skywalker was called A Kiss of Friendship, which, okay, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. I did tell you, though, that, like, in my theater, the entire theater started erupting, and, like, they all started laughing. Like, the whole theater was laughing. Granted, I think it was, like, begun with a nervous laughter, and then everybody else was laughing at everybody else's nervous laughter, but it was like, the whole theater was laughing at that kiss.
Yeah, that's
kind of weird.
But
yeah,
fucking sad. But no, this is like I said, this is what the sequel trilogy should have been. Dave Filoni really should have been, as cringe as it sounds, I'll say it again, should have been the heir to that empire, to the sequel trilogy thing, and he's showing up J.J. Abrams and those writers and Rian Johnson and those writers how it's done, you know. And quite frankly, I'm very curious to see where it will go. However, I will say though, if it wasn't for... Because if Dave Filoni did get the keys to the kingdom back in 2015 when they released Force Awakens, we never would have gotten all this plot with Thrawn, Ezra, and Sabine, which I think are pretty good. Because Star Wars Rebels actually covers Sabine, Ezra, Thrawn, that whole conflict. Ahsoka came before, back in 2007. So we would have had Ahsoka for the Force Awakens hypothetical Dave Filoni sequel trilogy, but we wouldn't have had Sabine and Ezra.
Filoni, he has a lot of things that people are going to like. For instance, he worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Wait, Avatar: The Last Airbender, the cartoon or the movie?
The cartoon.
Oh, never mind. The movie is trash. The cartoon's good. The movie's trash. Never mind. I was like, what?
Yeah. No. But no, he was on the cartoon. He before he was part of like doing Clone Wars and Rebels. He did animation before that. He worked on King of the Hill, things like Kim Possible, stuff like this. Okay. And then did Avatar, Clone Wars, Rebels. He was doing all animation. His live action stuff. He actually worked in like the art department and stuff with on movies like I think he was part of The Force Awakens, where he was like on like art design and stuff. And then I think the crossover is he started working on Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett. And so like so he
Whoa.
was like, yeah.
I'm looking at his stuff right now. He worked on King of the Hill for 2 years. My man. He also worked on Kim Possible,
Yeah.
which part of my childhood. Mission Hill, Lilo and Stitch, also part of my childhood. Wow. Okay. Cool. 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 Okay. No, good on him. Like, yeah, Dave Filoni. Dave Filoni is the man. We also got to talk about. I hate when people do this. It's annoys the fuck out of me. You will have people who will go
Okay.
and like this episode, and they'll say shit like, "Wow, that was great. Star Wars is finally back." Homie, Star Wars has been back for quite a while now. You just didn't like what you were watching. I hate when people do that because the
Oh,
same people have been in charge of Star
yeah.
Wars.
I mean, I don't know what. Yeah, what the thing is, you have to establish first, like what Star Wars is rather large and diverse at this point, and even when you're talking about the original trilogy or prequels or sequel trilogies, like they're very different products. So if someone's like, "Oh, Star Wars is back. I can finally have a movie as good as Return of the Jedi," like that tells me something different than Star Wars is back, like Andor, something that's like dark and intriguing. Like these are different ideas. These are very different products, and so I don't know, but yeah, Star Wars is back. Like, what do you mean? Like, what? Since when? Like, did you like Phantom Menace? Like, what kind of did you like Force Awakens? Like, what things are you defining as Star Wars? Because yeah.
You know what? I'm glad you brought up the past, because I want to discuss something real quick before I let you go, if you don't mind.
Sure.
There's this tweet I put out. So I saw this thing from Blu-ray Angel. I don't know if that's an actual business or whatever. And it said, "Do you wish you could have seen George Lucas direct his Star Wars sequels?" And I quoted this tweet and I said, "This is a weird idea that George's plans for the sequels would have been better because the current trilogy sucks." It's insane. This idea is insane. He wanted to bring back, these are George's plans. He wanted to bring back Darth Maul as the big bad with an edgy apprentice and dive deeper into the microscopic world of the Force. No, you would have hated that too. And this whole idea that George's ideas would have been better than what we have now, I've only seen pushed by grifty YouTube channels because they're using it as a means to strike at Kathleen Kennedy, who is at the moment the head of Star Wars. Now, I will agree that when Star Wars fails or is bad, it is kind of on her because she is the boss. The people at the top usually do get the blame because they are the ones in charge, they are the ones making the final decisions. That I agree with, but at the same time, what I'm talking about here is the ridiculous idea that George is all of a sudden this amazing saint when I'm old enough to remember that there were literal songs written about how George Lucas violated people's childhoods because he made the prequel trilogy. That is, like, come on. Once again, I'm going to repeat this for the people in the back. You hated his prequel trilogy, and you would have hated his sequel trilogy too.
Here's the big thing is some people are like, and I need I'm gonna start repeating this a lot because like people aren't gonna get it when we're talking about grifters, we're not talking about people with different opinions. People can have different opinions, but there are some people that think like a different opinion is justified just because it's different. Not all opinions are equal. Some opinions are wrong because they are either internally inconsistent or there is just a flat out like objectively false thing. Like, there's just some, like if somebody's like, "Oh, everything that like Star Wars has died under Kathleen Kennedy." I'd be like, "Well, what about fucking Andor?"
What about
Like
Mandalorian?
like something that's just like or a Mandalorian, like you're like it's just objectively false. Like so like, or something like that, or like there's Disney has this liberal agenda, and I'm like, except that they're trying to destroy a union right now. Like you're just like how like things that are just internally inconsistent or just flat out wrong because of a fact out there. right? You can have a different opinion. You can come to a different opinion. You can say like, I think Return of the Jedi is a good movie. I personally, Preston Jacobs, I do not think Return of the Jedi is a good movie. We can have different opinions on that, but there are certain, like, not all opinions are equal. Like if I say like, oh, I like ice cream because it's cold, that's a fine argument. If I said I like ice cream because it's hot, that you can't just be like, well, I have a different opinion, let's agree to disagree. You'd be like, no, like that opinion is wrong because ice cream is objectively cold. Like you can't say it like ice cream is hot. I like ice cream because it's hot. That makes no sense. So like when we talk about grifters, a lot of times we're talking about they're making arguments that don't make any sense. They're just trying to like say something that'll get clicks.
Or it's a dog whistle to mask some racism. I also want to point out this one guy in my comment section. I hate to do this to you because I'm sure you're a nice guy, but this guy Kingslayer2999, he goes, Rings of Power is hot garbage. Stop trying to make excuses for it, calling people grifters because they dislike trash. These grifters, as you call them, were hating on House of the Dragon until they saw how good it was. So explain that if they were just grifting. Certainly. You acknowledge that these people hated House of the Dragon before they even saw the show? I wonder what they saw that made them dislike it before they actually watched the whole thing. Also, don't you think it's incredibly silly to hate something before you've seen it? I understand, like, saying something looks bad, but actually saying it is bad before, like, even checking it out, and then reversing that opinion because it turned out to be decent is pretty grifty.
And like I say, like, their arguments, the causation is like, you know, they don't like something because they think it's left wing,
right?
And then, but they don't really explain like why, if something is left wing, does it mean it's going to be bad?
I'm waiting for the mental gymnastics for this show, because this show is turning out to be good. I'm waiting for the mental gymnastics for people to say, well, this one is the example. It wasn't woke. Really? Because you guys have been complaining about Star She or She Wars because all the main characters are female. Right. So I'm waiting for the mental gymnastics and the goalpost to move. But the reason I bring up that tweet and all that is because...
Right. Like they did it for House of the Dragon.
Exactly.
Like House of the Dragon, which is literally a show about the patriarchy and women trying to rule in the patriarchy, and they're like, oh, well, you know, and all of a sudden it's there's a guy with an eye patch. It's awesome.
The reason I bring up that tweet is because, once again, I remember a time when there were songs about George Lucas ruining your childhood. I don't want to say the actual word and getting in trouble with YouTube, but like, it wasn't ruining your childhood.
Right, we all know the South Park episode of like Lucas and Steven Spielberg with
forcing
with the
themselves. Yeah, right. So like, I remember a time when there were channels who made their bones on shitting on the prequel trilogy. Red Letter Media, who I love, by the way. I'm subscribed to them. I love those guys.
Sure.
The Plinkett reviews are, godly. They're the OG.
They're gold.
But of course, they're fucking hilarious. But at the same time, this was a time when George Lucas was known as that guy who ruined your childhood. I'm sure many people like the prequels. I had one guy on my Patreon said he loved The Phantom Menace. Hey, homie, that's great. I envy you for liking it. I personally can't bring myself to. I'm just not a fan of it. However, it's so weird that because the sequel trilogy is not that great, we now look back at George Lucas and say, you know what? We should have given him the keys to the kingdom after all.
I will say this. I mean, I'm gonna I remember being in a comic shop in when did it must have been around the time Clones came out. That was what, 2001?
2002.
2002. It must have been. So I was in a comic shop in 2002, and I remember a bunch of like, typical comic book like shop kind of men in there, like, robust guys sitting around debating pop culture, like, and I remember one of the guys going, I know I'm late to this party, I know you're all gonna laugh at me, but like George Lucas is a fucking hack, and they all like laugh at him because like it was like a late to the party kind of statement. Like people had been saying it about George Lucas. First of all, before the prequel trilogy, people were saying it about George Lucas. Like when after like all of his bombs with Radioland Murders and Howard the Duck, everyone's like, well, George Lucas doesn't have it anymore. And then people, like tried to watch Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, and they were no good. And then then Phantom Menace came out and was no good. And then Attack of the Clones came out and was no good. And yeah, everybody was like, man, like we're maybe like we were worshiping him for too long over nothing. And it's like, yes, you were. Like there's there are people that make a lot of great art, and there's people that make a lot of crappy art, and there's people that make a lot of both. George Lucas is one of them, I mean, we could say the same. M. Night Shyamalan, like, yeah, most of his stuff is crap. He made a couple good movies, and then he made a career about and I don't know. It's not everything somebody does is going to be good. Maybe not even the majority of something that somebody does is going to be good. And I don't think the majority of what George Lucas has done is necessarily good. Now, the things that he's done that's great, like Raiders and Star Wars is pretty fucking great. But
yeah, but he was collaborating on that, and the original trilogy is not just him; it was like a bunch of other people in tandem. The prequel trilogy,
oh yeah,
that was all him. He like literally. This is something Red Letter Media harps on all the time: is that George Lucas had complete creative control, and people are kind of afraid to like push back on certain things when they know they should.
Tell them that this is a bad idea, right?
There is one person did say how if George Lucas did do the sequel trilogy, at least they would have, held somewhat true to what came before instead of trying to like redo it all over again, which I'll give him that. I doubt if George Lucas did his sequel trilogy, he would have done the original trilogy but for a new generation. That's essentially what J.J. Abrams did. He kind of soft rebooted Star Wars with the sequel trilogy. So I'll give you that. George would have probably done something wildly different. Okay, fine. But you still wouldn't have liked it.
There's no way that George Lucas would have had episode 7 be another Death Star when episode 6 was a Death Star. Like, there's no way, like, George Lucas would have been like, but wait, we just had an episode 6 and this is episode 7. Like, J.J. Abrams looked at it like, well, it's been a long time since 1977 and 1983. We're paying homage to that. It's been so many years since that happened. But George Lucas would have been like, but no, like, that episode happened immediately before. Like, so there's no way he would have had Starkiller Base, George Lucas. But now, George Lucas sequel, it would have been a lot of stilted dialogue, a lot of like uncreative direction. It would have better continuity. Because the sequel trilogy had horrible continuity, like horrible thematic continuity, just not caring,
It would have had better continuity, but you wouldn't have liked it. Like, no one would have liked it. That's the only thing about it. Once again, he would have done almost the same thing the sequel trilogy did on certain plot points. An old villain returns, Darth Maul, who has an edgy apprentice, Kylo Ren. Leia, a female protagonist, would have been at the forefront. Luke would have kind of been in the back trying to start his new Jedi Order. And it would have been about Luke trying to restart the Order and Leia running the New Republic. Ultimately, I believe the other thing about it was that he wanted Leia to really be like the next chosen one, or to be like the one who's like the main character, and Luke would have not... I wouldn't say he would have been a supporting character, but
I mean, I guess that kind of makes in his little poetry sense, like first trilogy is about Vader, second trilogy is about twin number 1, third trilogy is about twin number 2. Yeah, I could see his his mind or something like that, because he's thinking about that. He's thinking like George Lucas. All of his faults, like I would say, the credit the one thing he would have had he would have saw it as a 9. He would have seen it as an 18-hour movie, not individual films like the sequel trilogy became.
I get that in hindsight, maybe Lucas was the lesser of two evils now that we got the sequel trilogy and it ruined a lot of things. I understand that. I agree with that. But his ideas still suck too. It's just really what it is. I do apologize. We got off on this whole thing about that's not Ahsoka, but episode 4, great. I really liked it. It was very Empire Strikes Back ish the way it ended. I'm very excited to see the next episode. Also, real quick before we end this, did you have any questions about the ending of the episode?
Now, the ending of the episode, they just all everybody. I mean, they all go through the gate, leaving Hera like left behind, right? And Ahsoka left behind without the map.
Right, and Ahsoka ends up in that one place where she sees Anakin
she's
again.
In the time. She's in the time. That's the time. The time
lobby
portal area, isn't it?
Yeah. I call it a lobby.
I can't believe they brought it, because didn't we specifically talk about this? Didn't when we talked about the time travel in Star Wars, and you were like, I don't think they're ever going to bring back the time lobby.
No, I thought they would. So when we talked about the trailer for Ahsoka, I was right and I was wrong. I was wrong where I thought she and Baylan were fighting in the time lobby. That did not happen, but she ends up there anyway. So I was right that it was going to show up. Basically, it's like, I don't know how she got there. She fell off a fucking cliff. I don't know what happened.
Can't Ezra pull her in?
He's not in the galaxy. He's not in the known galaxy. So,
but it's a time lobby, so like an earlier version of Ezra could have pulled her in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, that's actually, I think that might be possible. I think that's actually what's about to happen, because remember, he did do that in Star Wars Rebels when she's fighting Vader. He pulls her in, and like that's how he saves her. Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
All he does. That's fucking all Ezra does is like fucking pull in Ahsoka after she's losing lightsaber battles. That's her plot armor. Can't kill Ahsoka because time travelers are gonna save her every fucking time.
Pretty much, it's almost Star Trek-ish if that turns out to be true. Because isn't that what they kind of do in Star Trek? They go back in the timeline and, but yeah, so
right. Because I think in Generations, Picard is like, "How are you here, Guinan?" And she's like, "I'm an echo from a previous when Guinan was there in the ripple." Ugh.
I know, it's so fucking whatever. Anyways, see Anakin again. For a minute there, I'm like, fuck, I love this episode, but do I love it because my nostalgia is just like really hyped up, or because the episode was good? And to that I say yes, both. Yes, I'll take it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I was still like I was still doing my count, like how many seconds in between things. It wasn't as long. I'm not saying it's like super snappy dialogue yet, but like, you know, it was still better. It was better than the previous episodes. So
okay, fair.
Good times.
Preston, do you mind if we wrap it up here?
Sounds good.
Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this great episode of Ahsoka. We'll see you next week for episode 5. As always, have a good one.